Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today we are disregarding the standard view of biology to look at a new map of cancer, one that is currently being drawn in laboratories around the world. For decades, the medical community viewed tumors as isolated islands of destruction, chaotic masses of cells growing without order. We now know that this view is fundamentally incomplete. Tumors are not just biological accidents, they are engineers. They do not merely grow, they build. And their most insidious construction project is a superhighway paved with a sticky, fibrous protein called periostin. This episode is not just a story about a molecule. It is a story about hijacking. It is about how tumors tap into the body's electrical grid, the nervous system, to power their own expansion, turning our own neural networks into conduits for invasion. This is the story of the Periostin Highway. To understand this highway, we must first understand the asphalt. We need to look at the extracellular matrix. In a healthy body, the space between your cells is not empty. It is filled with a scaffolding called the extracellular matrix, or ECM. Sitting inside this matrix is a protein called periostin, or POSTN. In a healthy adult, periostin is quiet. It acts as an emergency repair crew. It is crucial during embryonic development to build heart valves and bones, and in adults, it wakes up only when tissue is injured. It coordinates wound healing by telling cells to migrate and stick together to close a cut. But cancer is often described as the wound that never heals. Tumors trick the body into a perpetual state of emergency. They coerce nearby support cells, specifically cancer-associated fibroblasts and pancreatic stellate cells, to churn out massive amounts of periostin. Imagine periostin as a molecular glue. It has specific domains called fasciclin Y domains that grab onto receptors called integrins on the surface of cancer cells. You can think of integrins as the tires on the cancer cell and periostin as the road surface. When periostin locks into these integrins, specifically the alpha V beta 3, alpha V beta 5, and alpha 6 beta 4 variants, it flips a switch inside the cancer cell. The message is clear: don't die, move, invade. The term Periostin Highway is not a metaphor we use lightly. In cancers like pancreatic ductal adenocarcinoma, head and neck squamous cell carcinoma, and prostate cancer, periostin literally modifies the physical landscape to create a path of least resistance. Let's look at the engineering blueprint of this process. It begins with paving the road, known as matrix remodeling. Normal tissue is soft and somewhat chaotic. Periostin binds to collagen and other matrix proteins, cross-linking them into linear, stiff bundles. This linearization of collagen creates physical tracks, literal rails, along which cancer cells can crawl. This stiffness is detected by the cancer cells via their integrin tires, triggering a signaling pathway known as FAK-SRC-YAP. This pathway hardens the cancer cell's internal skeleton, preparing it for travel. But paving the road is only step one. Step two is the neural connection, or perineural invasion. This is the hijack. Nerves are the path of least resistance in the dense, fibrous jungle of a tumor. Nerves are surrounded by a soft sheath called the perineurium, and they are rich in nutrients and signals. Periostin is the key that unlocks this door. It starts with chemoattraction. Periostin induces the cancer cells to secrete neurotrophic factors like NGF and BDNF. These molecules act like perfume for nerves, stimulating them to grow toward the tumor, a process called axonogenesis. Once the nerves are close, periostin physically bridges the gap between the cancer cell and the nerve. It binds to the nerve sheath and the cancer cells simultaneously, anchoring the tumor to the nerve. Once attached, the cancer cells use the nerve as a physical guide. They crawl along the nerve fibers, traveling away from the main tumor site to invade deep into the body, often reaching the spine or brain. The relationship between the tumor and the nerve is not one way. It is a deadly conversation known as neural tumor crosstalk. The tumor tells the nerve to grow towards it by releasing nerve growth factor, induced by periostin signaling. In return, the infiltrating nerves release neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and norepinephrine, which is essentially adrenaline. These chemicals bind to receptors on the cancer cells. Adrenaline activates the beta-adrenergic pathway, which boosts blood vessel growth and stops the cancer cells from dying. Acetylcholine, via muscarinic receptors, can directly stimulate tumor proliferation. This creates a feed-forward loop. The more nerves the tumor recruits, the more fuel it gets. The more fuel it gets, the more periostin it produces to recruit even more nerves. The Periostin Highway becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem of destruction. Let us examine how this plays out in specific cancers. Pancreatic cancer is notoriously painful and deadly. A 2026 study by Nakaya and colleagues revealed that pancreatic stellate cells are the primary engineers here. They secrete a flood of periostin that coats the nerves. This explains why pancreatic cancer has one of the highest rates of perineural invasion, occurring in up to 90% of cases. The tumor doesn't just push against the nerves, it eats along them. This neural invasion is often what makes the cancer inoperable, as it wraps around vital arteries and nerve plexuses. In prostate cancer, periostin overexpression is a red flag for aggression. The prostate is richly innervated. Research shows that periostin-rich tumors are more likely to escape the prostate capsule by riding the nerve bundles that exit the gland. This makes nerve-sparing surgery a double-edged sword. If the nerves are already hijacked, saving them might mean leaving the highway open for cancer recurrence. Then we have head and neck squamous cell carcinoma, which affects the tongue, throat, and mouth. For these patients, pain is an early warning sign. This pain is the direct result of periostin-mediated nerve invasion. The tumor is not just pressing on the nerve. It is chemically interacting with it, sensitizing pain receptors while using the nerve body as a ladder to climb toward the brainstem. So if periostin is the highway, can we set up a roadblock? The scientific community is racing to find out. There are several strategies currently under investigation to tear up the pavement. The first is using anti-periostin antibodies. Experimental therapies, like the MZ1 monoclonal antibody, have shown promise in mouse models of ovarian and breast cancer. By binding to periostin, these antibodies cap the sticky ends of the protein, preventing it from grabbing onto cancer cells. The highway remains, but the cars can't get on the on-ramp. Another approach uses integrin inhibitors. Drugs like selingitide, or newer beta-1 integrin blockers, effectively blind the cancer cell to the periostin signal. If the cell can't feel the highway underneath it, it doesn't invade. We are also looking at breaking the neural link. Some therapies aim to silence the nerves themselves. Beta blockers, which are common heart medications, are being investigated for their ability to stop the adrenaline fuel from reaching the tumor. Other strategies involve blocking nerve growth factor with drugs like tanezumab to stop the nerves from growing into the tumor in the first place. Finally, there are FAK inhibitors. These drugs target focal adhesion kinase, the engine that powers the cancer cell's movement along the periostin track. Drugs like defactinib effectively stall the car on the highway. The discovery of the Periostin Highway changes how we treat cancer. It suggests that killing cancer cells with chemotherapy is not enough if we leave the infrastructure, the periostin and the nerves, intact. We are moving toward a stromal targeting approach, therapy that treats the soil as well as the seed. By dismantling the Periostin Highway, we don't just slow the tumor down. We cut off its supply lines, blind it to its escape routes, and silence the deadly conversation it holds with our own nervous system. The goal is to turn the wound that never heals back into a scar that fades, leaving it static, silent, and benign. This is the new frontier of oncology, where we stop looking at the cancer cell in isolation and start looking at the world it builds around itself.